Okay, functions and data analysis fans, our topic for today, Notes 1-5, Ratios and Proportion. Before we start, let me tell you your joke of the day. What do you call a bear with no teeth? And the answer is a gummy bear. Okay, so starting with definitions, the word ratio means a comparison of two numbers by division. So a lot of times the way you think of a ratio is you look at a fraction, a divided by b, a over b, or you can write it as, we also call this a ratio as a to b, a colon b. So a ratio is a comparison of numbers with division. Now, something that goes with division is also typically multiplication. The idea of a proportion is two ratios set equal to each other. So basically two fractions that are equal. You can tell if we say that a over b is equal to c over d, these two ratios or fractions are proportional if a times d equals b times c. So if I take a times d and I take b times c, if these two ratios are truly proportional, if these are equal to each other, then what happens is that the cross products, where we cross multiply, a times d would have to be the same as b times c. So for example, if I say 3 over 6 and 2 over 4, now both of those reduce to 1/2, so we know that they're equal. One way to test that they are proportional is if I take 3 times 4, which is 12, and then I take 6 times 2, which is also 12, and since the cross products are equal, that means that 3 over 6 is proportional to 2 over 4. So let's solve a couple of these proportions. We'll do some examples here. So we're not going to do all of these, but let's take number 1. To solve a proportion, we are going to cross multiply. So cross multiply. I usually start with where the variable is. So x is going to multiply the 7. So I'm going to write that as 7x equals. A proportion is just an equation, so you do have to have equals, and then the other thing we'll multiply is 3 times 21. Now, you can write down 3 times 21 and work that out, or we can just do the multiplication now and say that is 63. So now what you have is an equation. We're going to solve the equation. This is 7 times x. I want to get x by itself, so to undo multiplication, we are going to divide by 7. 7 divided by 7 is 1, so we get x equals 63 divided by 7 is 9. And that's the solution. Now, you can always check. If you take the left side, 3 divided by 7, and I type that, what we get is a decimal. And if I take the right side of the equation, x over 21, 9 divided by 21, we get the same thing. So the left side of the equation equals the right side, so we're good. Okay, let's take number 4. And what's going to happen is that you're going to do the ones that we haven't done. Okay, so we'll do 4 together. That means you're going to be doing 2 and 3 yourself. So we have 7 over 3 equals 14 over x plus 2. All right, when we cross multiply, x plus 2 is going to multiply the 7. Now, I'm not going to multiply it yet. This 7 is going to multiply both of these. So I'm going to write 7 parentheses x plus 2 because we're going to need to distribute that 7. Equals 3 times 14, which is 42. Okay, so when I take the 7, when I multiply, it's not just the x that I'm multiplying, it's also the 2. So I'm going to distribute here, and we get 7x plus 14 equals 42. Now we're going to move the constant, which is positive 14. We'll subtract it. So 7x is equal to, that's 28. And then to undo 7 times x, we'll divide by 7, and x equals 4. Okay, again, you can check. You can take the 4 and you can plug it back in here. So 4 plus 2 is 6. And if I take 14 divided by 6, we get a decimal. And then 7 divided by 3, that's the left side of the equation. Same thing, okay? So 4 is our solution. Let's skip over 5 and let's take 6 here. So number 6, we've got, I'm going to cross multiply, so 84 will multiply all of this. 2x minus 1, I'll put that in parentheses first, equals, and then 138 will multiply not just 2, but x plus 2. So now we're going to distribute. So 84 times 2x is 168x. 84 times negative 1 is minus 84 equals 138 times x, and then plus 138 times 2, which is 276. Okay, now we have variables on both sides. I want to get the x's on one side and the constants on the other. I'm going to move the 138x. Since it's smaller than 168x, that's a positive 138x, so I will subtract 138x from both sides. And this will give us 30x minus 84 equals, that's 0, equals 276. Okay, now let's move the constant negative 84 to the other side, so we'll go plus 84. And that gives us 30x. Negative 84 plus 84 is 0. And then if we add 276 and 84, we get 360. Notice that I keep putting equal signs because these are equations. Last move here, that's 30 times x. So we will divide by 30, and what we get is x equals 12. All right, so we can check this here. I'm going to say 12, store it for x. And let's type the left side of the equation, 2x minus 1 divided by x plus 2. And we get a value. We get 23 over 14. And let's see, the right side was 138 divided by 84. And math, enter, enter. Same thing, 23 over 14. So x equals 12 is good. That is our solution right there. Now we're going to flip it on the back, and we're going to look at a couple of the word problems here. So let's try number 10. A car can travel 216 miles on 8 gallons of gas. How far can it travel on 12 gallons? So what happens here, we're going to make a proportion here. We are comparing two things. We're comparing the miles to the gallons of gas. You can write this proportion. There are a lot of different ways to write it. I am going to compare it, my fractions. I'll put miles on top and I'll put gallons on the bottom. Now you could do it the other way, but however you choose to compare, your two fractions have to be written the same way. So 216 miles for 8 gallons of gas. So I'll put 216 on top over 8. How far can it travel on 12 gallons? Now in this fraction, gallons is on the bottom. So when I put 12 gallons in this other ratio, it also has to be on the bottom. And I'll call this x. The key to a proportion is you have to set it up consistently. Just to show you, okay, we'll solve this. We'll do, that's 8 times x equals 216 times 12, which is 2,592. Okay, that's big. Last move is divide by 8, and we get x equals, okay, we'll come over here, divide by 8, 324. So x is equal to 324, and that's going to be miles. That's important that when you write your answer that you write the unit of measurement. Miles is not the same as kilometers or feet or yards Because it's miles, I want to put miles. Now let's say we had compared it, what if we had put gallons on top? What if we had said 8 over 216, miles over gallons? We're good as long as we put, I'm sorry, gallons over miles. So this time I would put 12 on top so that I'm making my proportion the same way, and I would put my x in the bottom. But notice that what happens, if I cross multiply, I still get 8x, and I still do 216 times 12, so I'm going to get the same equation. So there's more than one way to set these up. Just be consistent. If you set up a ratio one way, you have to set the other one up the same way. Let's take a look at one more problem here. Let's look at 13. It's a long word problem. In the year 2000, there were 8.7 deaths per 1,000 residents in the United States. If there were 281,421,906 residents in the U.S. during the year 2000, how many people died that year? Okay, it's kind of a dark problem here, but we're going to make a proportion because we are comparing two things. We're comparing deaths and for every 1,000 residents, comparing that to residents. So I'm going to put 8.7 over 1,000. So I'm putting deaths on top and residents on the bottom in the denominator. Deaths over residents. So 8.7 for every 1,000 residents. If there were 281,421,906 residents, how many people died? Well, the people that died, that is x. Now deaths are on top, so I'm going to put x on top, and then this number, 281,421,906. Now what's going to happen here, I'm going to cross multiply to solve it, and I get 1,000x equals, I know I'm going to multiply this thing, but just so I don't have to keep writing a huge number, I'm going to write this as 8.7 times 281,421,906. I can certainly multiply that out. I can use the calculator, but I know that my last step would just be to divide by 1,000. So what I'll do is I'm going to put all of these into the calculator at one time so that I don't have to keep typing these large numbers. Okay, so what's going to happen is we'll do 8.7 times 281,421,906. Make sure you type those correctly. And then we're going to divide by 1,000. So we'll do all the calculations at one time. And what we get is 244,837,0. So let's see. We get x equals 244,837,0.6. Okay, it says 0.58. I'll round it to 0.6. Now what this number represents, this is 2,448,370. These are the number of people that died in the year 2000 in the US. Okay, so those were the deaths. One thing you might want to say, okay, we can't have 0.6 deaths. So you could round this up and you could say this is 2,448,371, and that would be fine. So the rest of the notes are for you to do. Go ahead and work out the rest of the problems on the front and back, and that is the end of the notes.